Sergeant Mirak watched the newest consultant to the Ralkovian military enter the command post. Tall with pink skin and a small amount of fur on his head, this human seemed physically frail, especially compared to a Ralkovian's thick carapace. But Colonel Strana assured Mirak that the human came highly recommended. "Greetings," said the human, his universal translator digitizing his speech into Ralkovian tongue. "I am Lieutenant John Davis. I look forward to advising your battalion." The staff officers murmured hellos. Mirak made the gesture of respect to a fellow warrior. "What battlefield experience do you have?" he asked. "Your soft skin makes me think you've seen no combat." The other soldiers chuckled. Davis smiled, baring his tiny teeth that could pierce flesh so easily. "I did 2 tours fighting insurgents in a place called Mars. Lost many good friends there." Mirak gave an apologetic tilt of his antennae. "My condolences. I should not have assumed. Most sentients disliked combat and found ways to avoid serving in the military. Yet this human had volunteered, even though his frame seemed so fragile without even a proper exoskeleton. What had driven him to fight?" Before Mirak could inquire further, alarms blared throughout the base. He checked a report on his command pad. "Heavy enemy activity on the perimeter. Report to your stations. The enemy must be testing their defenses in advance of a major offensive." Chaos reigned in the command post as soldiers rushed to monitors and communications equipment. Maps materialized above the central holo table, showing a wave of red enemy contacts approaching the base. Lieutenant Davis stood calmly, watching the displays. Mirak opened a channel. "Perimeter units, report." The first response came from Sentry Tower 3. Taking heavy fire, multiple breaches. Then the line went dead. More red indicators blinked out around the perimeter. "How did they ambush our sensors?" said Mirak. "What is their strategy?" He checked the updates from long-range recon units. But the latest intel was now useless if so much had changed. Lieutenant Davis leaned over the table, eyes darting across the battlefield maps. "May I?" Mirak assented, and Davis called up a new tactical overlay. "Based on the timing of the attacks, the enemy has captured these sensor towers rather than destroying them. That has allowed them to feed false data, hiding this force here." He highlighted an area that had shown empty a few minutes before. Mirak turned his eye stalks toward the human. "Are you certain?" "It's what I would do in their position, a tactic insurgents often used back on Earth." "Shall we reposition our anti-armor units to meet them?" "Do it," ordered Mirak. This alien indeed had good instincts. The rest of the officers scrambled to carry out his rapid suggestions. Davis may have looked physically weak, but his mind was sharp. Soon warning came that the main gates had fallen. The last external cameras showed a horde of armored infantry swarming into the base, cruelty in their eyes at the slaughter. These were no conscripted soldiers merely following orders. They clearly enjoyed carnage. Soon, the command center shields shuttered closed. Defensive positions were prepared in the halls. It became a waiting game. The enemy would have the advantage once they entered these confined spaces. Most of the soldiers went silent, antennae furled tightly to their bodies, smelling the death on the air as the battle drew nearer. The acrid tang of explosives and scorched metal carried through the ventilators along with the screams of the dying. Lieutenant Davis alone seemed unaffected. He hummed an alien song under his breath as he checked the scopes monitoring their barricades. When he caught Mirak observing his calm, he shrugged. After years on Earth battlefields, this brings back memories. Mirak considered him with a new eye. "Your worlds must breed strong soldiers to harden you so." "Too true," said Davis. "Maybe when this fight is over, I'll tell you about jungle gorillas on Earth. They used surprise and savagery as weapons as devastating as any plasma cannon. By comparison, these amateurs don't seem so frightening." The observation surprised a harsh laugh from Mirak. This human kept demonstrating unusual courage. Mirak gave the gesture of respect, claws clacking together. "You do your species credit. Perhaps we may prevail yet if more fight like you." "Then let's give them some surprises," said Davis with a fierce grin. It was only a few minutes' wait until the first assault crashed against their barricades. The enemy were masters at close-quarters combat, but Davis had set up overlapping fields of fire to pin them down. Then he took over the gunnery controls, spraying plasma bursts with ruthless efficiency. The enemy advance turned into a charnel house. A few warriors made it through the perimeter by sacrificing dozens of their own. Davis stood in their path, sidearm drawn in a practice grip. He dropped two with clean shots between the eyes before they reacted. The third halted his charge, confused at the seemingly defenseless creature holding off battle-hardened killers. In that pause, Davis put a round through the weak joint at the neck, dropping the soldier instantly. Seeing Davis stand firm gave the Ralkovian troops courage. "For the homeworld!" came the cry as they surged into counterattack. Enemy warriors fell back, their advantage of ferocity fading against this unified defense. Hope soared in Mirak at the possibility they might repel the attack after all. Just then, explosions shook the command center. "Breach!" came the call. Ventral corridor. Internal sensors showed figures moving in, doubtless a demolition team heading for critical systems. "I will delay them," said Davis, racking his pistol slide. "Get back up down here!" Drawing a compact Ralkovian combat knife, he rushed from the command center alone. Merrick feared that without even body armor, the human stood no chance. But there was no time to argue with the brave, if reckless, warrior. The security feed showed Davis stalking down the corridor, hugging the walls. He paused just shy of an intersection, watching his motion scanner. When two hostiles came around the corner, he struck. Moving inhumanly quick, he buried the knife to its hilt in one's throat. As the choking enemy sagged, Davis snatched the plasma rifle and fired point-blank through the second soldier's faceplate. Both writhed on the floor, leaking vital fluids. Another squad approached down the perpendicular hall. Davis tossed a primed grenade to flush them out, following its blast with streams of searing plasma. Another trio fell, while their return fire missed the dodging human. Davis ejected the depleted heat sink, slapping in a fresh one before the next wave attacked. Such fluidity of motion spoke of decades surviving shootouts. Every alien was now fixated on the security feed as Lieutenant Davis held the corridor on his own. Stage by stage he fell back, stopping at each intersection to set ambushes that left more foes dead. His sustained rate of fire kept the demolition team trapped in an unfinished junction, pinned by ricochets until reinforcements arrived. When Mirak's troops finally battled through to the humans' position, they instead found 15 enemy corpses dripping down the passages. Davis leaned casually on a doorframe, grenades and ammo lined up for easy reach. He barely looked winded. "Took you boys long enough. I saved a couple live ones for questioning." With slow menace, he slid a fresh clip into his pistol before grasping the knife again. Even the hardened Ralkovian warriors gave him a wide berth. Together they advanced down the smoldering halls, rooting out the remaining infiltrators. Davis seemed to know every ambush point to check, every blind spot someone could hide within. He grinned wild and wide whenever a new firefight erupted, his shots never missing. Any prisoners they took were only alive because Davis allowed it. His manner shifted from analytical to bloodthirsty the closer he came to melee range. 5 harrowing hours later, the all-clear sounded across the command center. Less than a third of their base's defenders remained able to walk. But their enemy had been shattered against the walls they anointed with blood. By skill and spirit they had prevailed. Officers and troopers alike gathered around their savior. Covered in sapphire stains, clothes charred by plasma fire, Lieutenant Davis let his men strip away weapons and gear. He rubbed sore limbs, more annoyed at pulled muscles than the bites of shrapnel across his skin. When offered medical care, he waved the medics off. "Patch up your own first. I've endured far worse than these scratches." Someone brought cleansing water and nutrient rations. Davis gulped the meal eagerly between recounting specific close-quarters fights for his fascinated audience. Comparing spiritual tattoos and ritual scars with the alien warriors, he seemed fully a member of the pack. His manner swung wild between playful jokes and enthusiastic descriptions of violence. Watching the frightening yet charismatic predator among them, Mirek could well believe this human truly was hewn by battle, able to match any Ralkovian's prowess. "You have more than proven your skill and courage this day," Mirek finally said. "Truly, the Galactic Alliance's faith in your kind was not misplaced." Davis gave a grim smile. "I'm just glad I could keep my new comrades alive." He raised a drink in salute. "You fight well for amateurs. Stick with me, and someday you may even graduate to professionals." Their unit bonded closely that night, united by trauma and triumph. And rumors soon spread across Ralkovia and beyond of how one undersized alien, unarmored and undergunned, held off an invading force that should have rolled right over him. Instead, they broke against his uncanny battle insight, leaving only corpses behind. Now other commanders clamored for human advisors to join the endless interplanetary war. For they brought experience from even more brutal battlefields that Ralkovians were only beginning to comprehend. Mankind had tempered itself through endless conflict among its own fractious nations. Now, united at last, humans began unleashing their full combat potential across the stars. The Galactic Alliance had hoped these clever newcomers could serve well in support roles. But after witnessing humans in full fury, grizzled old soldiers like Sergeant Mirek knew better. This young race still carried the love of carnage coded deeply in their DNA. And no force in the universe could restrain humanity's true nature forever.